Welcome to Faith Lessons. This is Dr. Scott Stripling, Provost at the Bible Seminary, and this is 1st and 2nd Kings. The book of 1st and 2nd Kings follows the story of the united monarchy into the divided monarchy. In other words, we went from a period of decentralized rule in Israel into a period of centralization. First with the united monarchy, that was Saul, David, Solomon, and for a short time, Rehoboam. But during the time of Rehoboam, the kingdom split. And it split over tax policy. So when Rehoboam became king, he refused to listen to the older advisors of his wise father Solomon. Instead, he insisted on raising taxes, and this brought about a division of the kingdom between the northern tribes and the southern tribes. But during the time of Solomon, the kingdom had enjoyed unprecedented wealth, prosperity, and success. In fact, we read that Solomon had a total of 1,000 wives, and this is really meant to tell us that he was very successful in his foreign relationships, because this is the way that treaties were made in the ancient world, was by exchanging wives, or with one king giving his daughter to another king as a means of making a peace treaty. One of the great scenes in the book of 1 Kings is the establishment of Solomon's temple. So we moved from the tabernacle at Shiloh to David's tabernacle in Israel, and then finally we see the building of Solomon's temple. David had procured the materials for the building of the temple, but it was Solomon who was going to actually build it. And so we read in 1 Kings 6:1 that in the 480th year after the Israelites exited from Egypt, that Solomon began to build the temple of the Lord. And so this becomes a very important chronological indicator to help us date back to the Exodus and then forward into and toward New Testament times. We call this the book of Kings, but it could easily be called the book of Kings and Prophets, because here we see kings rising up and prophets holding them accountable. And the two primary prophets in 1 Kings are Elijah and Elisha, and we call these pre-classical prophets or pre-writing prophets because we don't have books that bear their names, but we do know that they were prophesying at that time. Later prophets we'll refer to as the writing prophets, and we have their chronicles saved in the text of the Bible. So we see then, as the kingdom divides in the time of Rehoboam, a very different view toward God. In the north, Jeroboam sets up golden calves, idols, in Dan in the north and Bethel in the south. And at Dan and Bethel, these golden calves become centers of pagan worship. And in fact, we don't have one good king in the north in the entire period of the divided kingdom. But in the south, it's about 50-50, half good and half bad. We're also introduced, as we read through 1 Kings and 2 Kings, a number of foreign rulers. For example, Sennacherib. And we see that finally God has had it with the northern kingdom of Israel because of their apostasy. And so he's going to allow the Assyrians to destroy them. And in fact, in around the year 722 BC, the Assyrians come in and they destroy that northern kingdom of Israel. Judah almost falls as well, and the story is recorded for us, but God ultimately spares them in the end. So we see, as we go through the kings, great wickedness like Ahab and Manasseh, and then we see men of great character such as Jehoshaphat and Hezekiah, people who seek after the Lord and trust God in times of conflict. I think there's a great lesson in that for us today, is that as God raises up leaders, they're not going to be perfect. Certainly the ones in the Bible weren't either. But the message is, from both the prophets and the kings, that if in times of crisis we will look to God and put Him first, He will indeed be our rescuer, our shield, and our deliverer.
Thanks for listening. Stay connected with us at thebibleseminary.org and subscribe to this podcast.